I, 15F, walked into a really awkward moment with my parents, 45M plus 43F, and we haven't talked yet. Unsure if I should bring it up. Advice especially from parents lol. Update, I'm home now and my dad mentioned it lamau. I was making toast and he came into the kitchen and decided the best way to resolve it was saying, you know, when you left we just missed you so much we thought we would have to resort to making another one. I was like dad no, but we laughed lol. So lamau, it's all good ha ha ha. Okay, so basically I went to my best friend's house for a 3-day sleepover. Her family is going to their cabin for the weekend and invited me along for the trip. Our parents are friends, so it's normal for us to go up there together since they know her family. My parents decided not to come and just have a home alone weekend. So anyway, about 2 hours after I got to my friend's house I realized I accidentally left my snow pants at home. We were planning on skiing so I need them. So my friend's mom drove me back real quick to grab them cause we were leaving the next morning. She waited in the car thankfully and I ran back in and upstairs. I got my pants and then wanted to quickly give another goodbye to my parents and let them know I was just home to grab my pants in case they had heard me / were wondering why I was back. They weren't in their room or living room, so I did a quick once around the house to find them. Opened the back door to the deck to check if they were in the hot tub and they definitely were. I accidentally walked into them totally naked and doing it in the hot tub. I yelled and turned around. My mom yelled, my dad yelled, everyone was yelling lol. It was the worst most awkward thing that's ever happened in my freaking life. At least our hot tub isn't visible to the neighbors. They dipped down into the water really fast but I still saw way too much in like 3 seconds. My parents are in their 40s and I didn't even know they still did it honestly. I was like okay I'm leaving bye and they told me to have a good time and called to me that they loved me while I was running back to the car lol. I didn't tell anyone what happened and my mom has texted me asking how the trip is etc but hasn't brought up what happened. Do I bring it up? Do I wait for them to? Do I need therapy now? LOL joking. But yeah, it was really freaking awkward and I'd what to say to them about it now. Advice? Too long didn't read, walked into an awkward moment between my parents and unsure if I should mention it or how to mention it or wait for them to. Christ. Kids think 40-year-olds are basically dead I guess. News flash, people well into their 60s do it too. This is cute. I assure you that people in their 40s still have sex, yes even parents. You don't need to bring it up, try to ski it out of your mind. Just let it go. There is really nothing to say. It was awkward for everyone but it's great they still have that intimacy and connection. OMG, you think people stop having sex after 40? That's hilarious. Seriously, you should all just laugh it off because you will be doing that anyway when you're their age and the same thing happens to you. There's nothing wrong with sex and there's nothing wrong with what happened. It was just awkward, that's all, no big deal. If you feel awkward about it, sure bring it up, but there's nothing for your parents to feel ashamed about. Honestly, it's normal to walk in on that situation and my advice is just don't think about it. At least they're still in love is all I would take away from that lol. Just accept it happened and move on. That's a funny story though, better than my walking in story lol. Huge betrayal by in-laws. Reposting, I accidentally broke rule number 3 with the original post. Okay, so please bear with me, this is gonna be really long. Background info, I'm a 34F, I am very happily married, together since 2012, to my husband, 33M, and we have 3 both the day I fucked up sons, 4 years, 2 years and 3.5 weeks. The in-laws involved are my husband's family, his brother, Bill, 35M, his brother's wife, Sil 32F, and his parents, Mill plus Phil, they're in their early 60s. So I just had my 3rd baby. It was a planned home birth that was somewhat difficult but went well overall. But in the first week of his life the midwives realized that he wasn't gaining weight properly. He didn't have any other symptoms of anything else being wrong. His input and output were good, he was waking up to eat, etc. So seeming totally healthy, he just wasn't gaining the weight he needed to. We admitted him to the hospital, at the midwives/on-call pediatrician's advice, when he was just over a week old, just to make sure there wasn't a medical cause for his lack of weight gain. Needless to say, it was very sad and stressful for me. He ended up being in the hospital for 8 days. All his testing came back normal, and we had to wait until it was clear that he was gaining weight before he could come home. No explanation was found. The doctor just said that for whatever reason some babies can have a slow start, but it doesn't mean anything is wrong, and that this is likely the case for our son. He's been home since Tuesday, March 2, and has been doing amazing, gaining 50 to 70 grams every day, and he has now exceeded his birth weight. Flexed bicep. So of course we are thrilled about that. Here's where it gets messy. On the day the baby came home, literally when daddy was on the way home from the hospital with him, there's a knock on our door. I was home alone other than my 2 years/show who was upstairs napping. Our eldest was at my parents' house. I open the door and there are 2 women there. A social worker from Child Protective Services, CPS, and a public health nurse. My stomach just dropped and I was incredibly confused. I let them in and ask what this is about. Apparently someone called the mental health hotline concerned about my mental health now, my messy house. Something about my mental health last summer. I have literally no idea what that meant. I remember being pretty happy in the summer, and whatever else they said was enough to generate an emergency response from CPS. I was, and still am, absolutely flabbergasted. I answered all their questions totally honestly. Yes, I'm pretty miserable right now, but I'm still physically recovering from birth and I hate the newborn phase at the best of times, let alone when my baby is in the hospital. I'm not worried though. I've already talked to my husband and have a plan in place. If I'm still miserable when the circumstances making me miserable have resolved, he's already grabbed the pamphlets from the hospital about PPD resources. We know about the mental health hotline. I know to call 911 if I ever have thoughts about hurting myself or my kids, but I've literally never had such a thought, etc. You could tell within minutes that they could both see that they were there needlessly, but because an emergency report was generated they have to follow through with procedures. Meaning they have to follow my family until the new baby is 3 months old. Which makes me so angry because there are kids out there who are actually in danger, parents who are actually in crisis, and now these resources are tied up on me without a good reason. They both said that the house was totally fine, and of course it's not gonna be pristine all the time when you have young kids. The nurse was like, well, normally I would come back and weigh the baby for you, but we already have a scale from the midwives and are reporting his weights to them. Yes, I'm not super happy, but we're on the ball and our kids are deeply loved and well taken care of, and while my mental health isn't perfect, whose is? There was absolutely no need for outside government officials to get involved. So daddy literally comes home to this. I shot him a warning text, but still. And what should have been a joyous, private moment was witnessed by 2 strangers. They were polite and respectful, but obviously them being there totally ruined my baby's homecoming. They talked to my husband separately, called both our parents, the midwives, the hospital, and possibly my GP, not sure about that one. I know my parents were like, yeah, we're keeping an eye on her but we think she's okay. I have no idea what the in-laws said. I'm assuming the midwives would share that sentiment, because if they thought me or my kids were in danger they would have reported it. I know I don't actually have anything to be embarrassed about, but it is still pretty humiliating to have CPS calling everyone checking up on me. Of course CPS can't tell us who called, but apparently they're allowed to say who didn't call and said it wasn't any of the grandparents or the midwives. We knew for sure it wasn't my sister, so it didn't take us long to figure who had made the call. Still with Bill's, and possibly Mill's, encouragement, we are both incredibly angry and hurt. I haven't even spoken to Sil since before I had the baby, and I talked to Bill once in person when he dropped some food off for us. I told him how I was feeling, which was not great at the time, and his reply was, yeah, I felt exactly the same way when Jay, their daughter, was in the NICU and gave me a big hug. I also told him a funny anecdote, this comes up later, about how our oldest son had said, "Mommy, your hair smells disgusting." I'm sure I looked like hell too, but I don't think there's anything wrong with looking like shit in the privacy of your own home. For context, I am not generally a super well-groomed person even at the best of times because I simply don't care about my physical appearance. I dress purely for comfort, don't wear makeup and just let my hair air dry when I bathe. None of this is new, I've been this way the whole time we've known each other. I didn't think anything of our conversation. In what world do you make a call like that without talking to the person first? And if they think I'm not a reliable source, which they are 100% mistaken about, then why wouldn't they talk to my husband? Say I'm worried about C. I was thinking about calling the mental health hotline about resources for her, at which point he could say thanks, but we've got this. I already got the PPD pamphlets from the hospital just in case, and we know about the hotline. But I think she'll be fine once the baby is home and settled and we're through the newborn phase, and that could have been the end of it. Or even go ahead and call, but don't give them my personal information. My husband is off work for 2 months for the baby, and I find it very insulting that they think that they knew better than the people who are around me every day. I see my parents almost daily too. We've barely seen each other over the fall and winter as well, which I attributed to the pandemic, us being busy with young families and me having a rough pregnancy. I had a SPD and could barely even walk, so I wasn't doing much of anything. I wasn't withdrawing, and it absolutely wasn't anything to do with them personally. Yes, I was miserable, but I wouldn't have classified myself as depressed. Just reacting reasonably to a temporary situation. I wasn't gonna be pregnant forever. So we've been stewing over this since Tuesday. We went over last night, Saturday, to hash things out in person. They explained where they were coming, and it took a while, but they did sincerely apologize for how things turned out. Sil expressed that she had no idea CPS would be called in, and that she specifically told whoever she spoke to that she didn't think my kids were in danger, and also that they were mortified by the timing of things. I believe them, and I accept and feel satisfied by their apology for this part of things. Unfortunately, things went totally sideways after that, and I am totally blindsided by what came next. They said that the whole family has been worried about my mental health for years, and that Sil had to cut herself off from me last summer because I'm so negative, and she couldn't stand it anymore. She also had to unfollow me. The only social media I have, other than Reddit, is Instagram. I have a private account and am one of those obnoxious people who pretty much only posts about their kids and how much they love them. I intentionally keep my Instagram positive, so I'm not sure why she found it so offensive or worrisome. Annoying. Yes, I have enough self-awareness to understand that. Happy cat face. They said that I have been withdrawn and not present or engaging in family functions. A friend of theirs committed suicide a year ago, and they felt like the only warning sign they noticed with him was that he was withdrawn. So I think there's a great deal of projection going on here. As for being engaged at family functions, I have no idea what they're talking about. On my end, I always enjoyed family stuff with them, and there have been no issues that I was aware of. I am pretty vocal about not enjoying pregnancy, and I have been pregnant literally 30 months out of the last 5 years, but feel like I'm allowed to not enjoy pregnancy, and also thought I could be honest about it with people I considered family. Along with the hard pregnancies, I've gone through quite a few difficult life experiences in the last 5 years. Pregnancy loss in between my first 2 kids, a very dear friend died in 2017, my mom, who is my best friend, got really sick and was in the hospital for 4 months in 2019, and of course everyone's favorite collective trauma, the pandemic. So yeah, I've not necessarily been super happy for quite a while, but I feel like I wasn't depressed. I was just responding appropriately to difficult situations. But I live by the saying, this too shall pass. The one exception to this was after the birth of my first in 2016. I definitely had PPD for about a year after his birth. I was in denial for a long time, but eventually recognized what was happening and reached out for help to my husband and my parents. I started counseling when he was about 1, and within a few months the fog lifted. I was really down when my mom was in the hospital too. This coincided with the end of my pregnancy with my second and his birth as well, but felt good again once my mom was home and we were through the newborn phase. So I don't really classify that as depression because it resolved as soon as the difficult circumstances resolved. I guess I should mention that I do have a lifelong issue with depression and anxiety. anxiety. I am well versed in dealing with it, and my husband and family are totally aware and check in with me regularly. It's not a secret and I'm not ashamed. I don't totally remember, but I'm sure I've at least mentioned it to my in-laws, but I don't think I've talked about it much or in detail with them. So I'm not a sunshine and rainbows type of person, and my baseline mood may be lower than the average person. But again, none of this is new. The hair comment also came up and they took that to mean my hygiene was slipping. Woman face palming, which is not true at all. No, I don't shower every single day. Show me a new mom with 3 kids who does, but my hygiene is totally fine. The only reason my son said the hair thing is because I was literally about to get into the shower and me and my husband were just joking around about how I smelled disgusting. I didn't think it was necessary to share the context when I told the anecdote to Bill, because that kind of takes the fun out of it. Furthermore, if my hygiene was slipping, do they not think that my husband would notice and that would be something we would address within our own family? Another thing about Sil is that she has worked with kids a lot and is now in school to become a teacher. Apparently she takes her role as a mandated reporter very seriously. She said that there have been at least 6 incidents with me that she could have reported and that she almost called on me last summer. She then refused to give me an example, saying she didn't want to go there. I told her it wasn't fair to dump something like this on me and not give examples because I literally have no idea what she's talking about. I was able to pry one example out of her, which she visibly struggled to come up with, and it was that one time I said something along the lines of I want to give up and not feed my kids lunch. Okay, in what world is expressing frustration at feeding 2 toddlers lunch a reportable offense? Obviously she took that statement literally, so she thinks I would actually give up on feeding my children? Like what? My kids are my world. Anyone who knows me even a little bit could tell you that. Even in my darkest days of PPD I still fed my baby. And I keep circling back to, if I was so depressed and not feeding my kids, or whatever the hell else they thought, do they really think my husband or parents wouldn't intervene? I said this several times to them and their answer was often, with mental illness those closest to it can't see what's going on. I'm pretty fucking sure someone would notice if I wasn't feeding my kids. Seriously. She also said, I've failed you and I tried to counsel you and it didn't work. Excuse me, but that's not your job. Oh, and I grew up with mental illness in the home and I don't want that for your boys. First of all, who didn't? And then what does she mean by that? People with mental illness shouldn't have kids. I should be removed from the home? I am just vexed. Mill and Phil are involved in that. They would be the main source of information for Bill and Sil because they actually see us, unlike them. If the whole family has been worried about me for years, why has no one talked to me? Mill has expressed worry occasionally to my husband and he will say she's fine or yeah, she's a bit down because of XYZ, but we're handling it. But I guess that wasn't enough. I feel like they are all a dog with a bone, got the wrong idea about me years ago and it has just been snowballing this whole time, unbeknownst to me. I'm so deeply hurt because on my end everything was totally fine and I thought we were pretty good friends too. But it turns out they've been gossiping about me and policing my mental health this whole time, never actually once taking the time to say, see, I'm worried about you. Never giving me the chance to say that I'm actually okay and you don't need to worry. But I get the feeling that might not have made a difference. They saw what they wanted to see and have been compiling a file full of false red flags that I've apparently been dropping. I feel like they've never actually liked me or understood my personality now that all this is coming out. Edit, there's a note at the bottom explaining, but we have now talked to Mill and Phil and it totally good between us. Phew, okay, this is ludicrously long. I will wrap up now. If anyone has actually read this far, please accept my deepest gratitude. Praying gesture. So where do I go from here? If a friend did this to me, I would just cut them off. I don't know how to move forward, what to say or how to act in front of them because she won't give me examples of what I've done so grievously wrong. But as hurt as I am, I don't want to cut family off. But I'm also not really willing to be the bigger person, right now, at least, and just let it go and move on. Too long didn't read. Bill and Sil reported me to a mental health hotline that generated an unnecessary case opened on my family with CPS. It then comes out that the whole family has been worried about my mental health for years, again, unnecessarily, but no one ever actually talked to me about it. I don't know how to move on from this. Edit, I don't have time to reply right now, but thank you so much to everyone who has replied so far. Hearing outsiders' perspectives is incredibly helpful and is making me feel a bit better about everything. We also just got back from talking to Mill and Phil and it went very well. We explained everything Sil and Bill said and asked them to speak to it, and they were like, yes, we have been worried about you in this immediate postpartum period. No, we have not been worried for years, and what B and Sil did is beyond comprehension. They absolutely should have talked to you/husband before doing what they did. And like reasonable people, they did talk to my husband, I think right when the baby went into the hospital, about being worried about me, and were satisfied with his response and were going to leave it at that. We also asked them to never discuss our family with B and Sil, and they agreed instantly and understood why we were setting that boundary. My 24F husband, 24M, spends a lot of time with a female co-worker. It's affecting our relationship. Advice on meeting in the middle? Update, conversations went horribly. We are currently separating. I'll be staying with my mom. He is apparently in love with her. So my husband and I have been together for 7 years. This is the first time I've ever felt insecure in the relationship, but it seems like all my attempts to communicate cause fights. So my husband has a co-worker that in the last year he has been spending a lot of time with, where it's starting to concern me. They became friends about 2 years ago. It's gotten to the point that they hang out at least 3 times a week outside of work, text daily, frequently go out for dinner, etc. I'm trying really hard not to be the jealous wife. I am totally fine with him having female friends, that's not the issue. It's that she is starting to be all he talks about. He invites her to everything. She's at our house constantly. I came home once and her feet were on his legs. That seemed inappropriate to me, but he swore up and down nothing happened and it was just feet. In the past, when I have expressed worry, he has showed me their texts etc. and promises nothing nefarious is happening. He says she's just his best friend. He told me I can look at his phone or emails whenever I want if I'm worried. It somehow doesn't help though. I've never seen any inappropriate texts and he isn't secretive about him communicating or time with her. Is totally fine if I ask to come to dinner or go bowling with them etc. But it just seems too much. I feel a little crazy honestly, but it's just getting to a point where I feel as though he cares about her more than me. He will often say, oh, Sam would love this while we are shopping for example. When he gets home and I ask how his day went, he always talks about her every day. I've stopped mentioning when he does it because it's daily. I just find it weird. I'm open to hearing I'm the one making a problem if that's the case, too. But every time I bring it up, it starts an argument about how I'm just jealous and crazy, or me getting angry at him for not listening to what I'm saying. Advice on resolving this? Too long didn't read. Husband spends what I consider too much time with a female co-worker. He thinks I'm just being overbearing. Advice on communicating my feelings effectively?